Christmas Eve loneliness. Rachel Bennett pressed her forehead against the cold window of her apartment, watching snowflakes dance through the glow of streetlights below. The historic brownstone buildings of Beacon Hill wore their Christmas decorations like festive armor. Each window a warm rectangle of family togetherness that made her small studio feel even more empty. At 29 years old, she had imagined this Christmas would be different. She had pictured herself and Tyler decorating their first tree together, maybe even discussing moving in together. Instead, she was staring at the 3 cardboard boxes Tyler had left behind when he moved out last week. Still sitting untouched by her door, the breakup that changed everything. The conversation replayed in her mind like a cruel recording. Tyler had looked at her across their usual coffee shop table and said the words that shattered her carefully planned future. He needed space. He wanted to focus on his music career. He loved her, but he was not in love with her anymore. The phrases felt rehearsed, like he had practiced them in front of a mirror. What hurt most was not the breakup itself, but the realization that she had spent 3 years building a life with someone who had one foot out the door the entire time. Isolated on the holidays, Rachel picked up her phone and scrolled through social media. Each post a tiny knife wound to her already bruised heart. Her college roommate posted pictures of her engagement ring. Her cousin shared videos of her toddlers opening presents. Even her coworker Jennifer had posted a selfie with her new boyfriend at a Christmas party. Everyone seemed to have someone except her. Her parents had begged her to come home to Portland for the holidays, but Rachel had declined. Her boss, James Whitmore, needed someone to stay in Boston to handle the potential client emergency over the holiday break. It was a chance to prove herself, to show dedication to her career at Whitmore Digital Solutions. Now, sitting alone in her apartment with leftover Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine, she wondered if career dedication was worth this crushing solitude. A moment of weakness, the wine was cheap and sweet. The kind she would normally never buy, but tonight it seemed appropriate. Rachel poured herself a second glass and felt the familiar warmth spreading through her chest. Loosening the tight knot of sadness she had been carrying, she needed to talk to someone. Her best friend Monica was in Hawaii with her family, probably sitting on a beach somewhere beautiful and warm. But Rachel needed to hear a friendly voice, needed to release the pressure building inside her. She grabbed her phone and opened the messaging app, searching for Monica's name through slightly blurred vision. The wine had made her fingers clumsy and her eyes watery. She tapped the voice message button and let everything pour out. Her voice cracked as she talked about Tyler, about feeling like a failure at 29, about watching everyone else build lives while hers fell apart. She talked about her fears of ending up alone, about questioning every choice she had made in the past decade. The words tumbled out in a messy, honest stream of consciousness that she would probably regret tomorrow. But tonight, she just needed someone to know how broken she felt. The terrible mistake, Rachel hit send and collapsed back onto her couch, clutching a throw pillow against her chest. The apartment felt too quiet, too empty, too much like a reflection of her internal state. She closed her eyes and tried to imagine herself somewhere else. Someone else, living a different life where heartbreak did not exist. Her phone buzzed 20 minutes later. Rachel reached for it without opening her eyes, expecting Monica's comforting response. Instead, she saw 2 words that made her blood run cold. Come here. She sat up so fast the room spun. That was not Monica's texting style. Monica used emojis and exclamation points and would have called immediately after hearing that message. Rachel's hand shook as she scrolled up to check the conversation thread. Her stomach dropped. The name at the top of the screen read, James Whitmore. She had sent the most vulnerable, desperate, emotional message of her life to her boss, to the CEO of the company where she worked, to the man who signed her paychecks and evaluated her performance and maintained a reputation for being strictly professional at all times. Panic and confusion. Rachel jumped off the couch and started pacing, her heart hammering against her ribs. How had this happened? She pulled up her contacts and saw the problem immediately. James Whitmore and Monica Wilson were listed right next to each other alphabetically. In her wine-hazed state, she had tapped the wrong name. She had just sent her boss a 5-minute voice message about her failed relationship, her loneliness, and her quarter-life crisis. This was not just embarrassing. This could be career-ending. Her fingers flew across the screen as she typed an apology. Mr. Whitmore, I am so sorry. That message was meant for someone else. Please disregard it. She rewrote the message 3 times, trying to sound professional and apologetic without making it worse. His response came within seconds. I know it was a mistake, but come here anyway. My address is in my work profile. Rachel stared at the message in confusion. It was nearly midnight on Christmas Eve. Why would her boss want her to come to his home? Was this about work? Was he angry? The rational part of her brain screamed that this was inappropriate, that she should decline politely and deal with the embarrassment on Monday. The unexpected invitation, but something in the simplicity of his message stopped her. James had never been anything but professional with her in the 2 years she had worked for him. He was known for being brilliant but distant, successful but reserved. He ran board meetings with precision and made million-dollar decisions without breaking a sweat. But he also treated his employees fairly, paid well, and had built one of Boston's most successful digital marketing firms from nothing. If he was asking her to come to his home on Christmas Eve after hearing that message, maybe he had a reason. Rachel looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were red and puffy from crying. Her hair hung in messy waves around her shoulders. She wore yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt with a coffee stain on the sleeve. This was definitely not how she wanted to appear in front of her boss. But James had already heard her at her lowest point. There was no pretending anymore. She took a deep breath, changed into jeans and a clean sweater, and called a rideshare. Whatever was about to happen, sitting alone in her apartment felt worse than facing the unknown. Arriving at the penthouse, the rideshare driver pulled up to a sleek, high-rise building in the Back Bay neighborhood. Her floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the Christmas lights strung across Boylston Street. Rachel had known James was successful, but seeing where he lived made her realize just how different their worlds were. The doorman greeted her politely and directed her to the private elevator that led to the penthouse. As the elevator climbed, Rachel's anxiety grew with each passing floor. What was she doing? This was her boss. This was Christmas Eve. Nothing about this situation made sense. The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse foyer. James stood waiting, and Rachel barely recognized him. Gone was the sharp suit and perfectly styled hair. He wore a simple gray sweater and dark jeans, his hair slightly tousled as if he had been running his hands through it. His blue eyes, usually so focused and distant in the office, held something softer now, something almost vulnerable. He looked younger, somehow more human. Less like the untouchable CEO, and more like just a man. An unexpected welcome, Rachel, he said, his voice lacking its usual authoritative tone. Thank you for coming. I know this is strange. He stepped aside to let her enter. The penthouse was stunning, but surprisingly sparse. Modern furniture in neutral tones, huge windows showcasing the Boston skyline, expensive art on the walls. But like her own apartment, it felt empty. There were no Christmas decorations, no photos on the shelves, no signs of the warmth that usually filled homes during the holidays. It was beautiful but cold, like a magazine spread rather than a home where someone actually lived. I made coffee, James said, gesturing toward the open kitchen. Or, I have wine if you prefer. Though maybe you have had enough wine for tonight? There was no judgment in his voice, just a hint of gentle humor. Rachel felt her cheeks flush. Coffee is good, Mr. Whitmore. I really need to apologize again. I never meant for you to hear that message. It was unprofessional and inappropriate. James handed her a steaming mug and motioned for her to sit on the leather couch. He took the chair across from her, maintaining a respectful distance. Breaking down the walls, James, he said. Here you can call me James, and you do not need to apologize. Actually, I should probably apologize to you. Rachel frowned, confused. Why would you need to apologize? James leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. The client emergency that required someone to stay in Boston over Christmas. It does not exist. I made it up. Rachel felt her confusion deepen. I do not understand. Why would you do that? James looked down at his coffee mug, and for the first time since she had known him, he looked genuinely uncomfortable. Because I knew you were struggling. I have seen it in the office for the past few weeks. You have been distracted, sad. I heard through Jennifer that you and your boyfriend had broken up, and I knew your family was in Portland. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I also knew that I would be spending Christmas alone, and selfishly I thought, if you stayed too, maybe I could find some excuse to reach out, to not be completely isolated. The truth about James Rachel sat in stunned silence. Her successful, composed, seemingly perfect boss had manipulated a work situation because he was lonely. It should have made her angry, but instead she felt a strange sense of connection. You would have been alone anyway? She asked softly. James nodded. This is my third Christmas since my wife died. Catherine passed away 2 years ago. Cancer. We had just bought this place 6 months before her diagnosis. She never got to properly live here. The revelation hit Rachel like a wave. Suddenly, so much made sense. The emotional distance James maintained at work, the lack of personal items in his home, the way he threw himself into his business with such intensity. He was not cold or uncaring. He was grieving. I am so sorry, Rachel whispered. I had no idea you were married. Shared pain. I do not talk about it, James said. At work, it is easier to just be the boss, to focus on projects and deadlines and quarterly reports. If I let people see the real me, the broken parts, it makes everything harder. He looked at her directly now. But when I heard your message tonight, heard you talking about feeling lost and alone, I recognized that feeling. I have been living with it for 2 years. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of shared pain hanging between them. Why did you really ask me to come here? Rachel finally asked. James set down his coffee mug and leaned forward. Because I have been where you are. That first Christmas after Catherine died, I spent it completely alone in this apartment. I told myself I was fine, that I just needed to get through it. But it was the worst night of my life. I do not want anyone else to go through that if I can help it. Opening up, so this is a pity invitation? Rachel asked, though there was no bitterness in her voice. No, James said firmly. This is me being honest for maybe the first time in 2 years. Rachel, you are an incredible employee. You are smart, creative, dedicated, but more than that, you are kind. You remember everyone's birthdays. You always ask how people are doing and actually listen to the answers. You bring light into the office, even when you are clearly struggling yourself. Rachel felt tears pricking her eyes. I do not feel like I bring light anywhere right now. I feel like I am 29 and my life is completely off track. James smiled sadly. I felt that way at 36 when Catherine got sick. All our plans, all our dreams, just gone. We were going to travel, start a family, grow old together. Instead, I got 2 years of hospitals and treatments and watching the person I loved most slowly fade away. A different kind of connection. How do you survive that? Rachel asked. How do you keep going? James was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, I do not know if I have been surviving or just existing. I built the company bigger, worked longer hours, filled every moment with something so I would not have to think or feel. But that is not living. That is just avoiding death. He looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Hearing your message tonight reminded me that I am not the only person struggling. That pain and loneliness are not unique to me. And somehow, knowing you were hurting too made me feel less alone. Rachel understood what he meant. Sitting here in this expensive penthouse with her successful boss, she felt less alone than she had in months. Not because her problems were solved, but because someone else understood the specific ache of loneliness. I thought Tyler was my forever person, she admitted. We were together 3 years. I kept waiting for him to propose, to want to build a real life together. But he just wanted to keep things casual, keep his options open. I feel stupid for wasting so much time. Mutual understanding. You are not stupid, James said gently. You were hopeful. You believed in something. That is not a weakness. He paused. Catherine and I only had 5 years together total. 3 years dating, 2 years married, 1 year of her being sick. I would give anything for 3 more years, even if I knew they would end the same way. His voice cracked slightly. Time with someone you care about is never wasted, even if it does not end how you hoped. Rachel wiped away a tear. Do you ever stop missing her? James shook his head. No, but the missing changes. At first it was this crushing weight that made it hard to breathe. Now it is more like a constant companion. Always there, but not always suffocating. He looked around the sterile apartment. Catherine would hate what I have done to this place. She loved color and chaos and filling spaces with life. She would say, I have turned our home into a mausoleum, finding common ground. Why have you not changed it? Rachel asked. James laughed softly. Because changing it feels like letting go. As long as everything stays the same, I can pretend she just stepped out for a moment. That she will walk back through that door any second. Ate Rachel's eyes. But I know that is not healthy. I know I have been stuck. They talked for hours, losing track of time. Rachel told him about her dream of starting her own boutique marketing agency, but being too afraid to take the risk. James talked about how he and Catherine had planned to open a second office in Portland. But he had abandoned the idea after she died, as dawn began to lighten the sky outside the windows. Rachel realized something had shifted between them. James was no longer just her boss. He was a real person with real pain and real struggles. And somehow that made her feel less broken. Thank you for tonight, Rachel said softly. For being honest. For letting me see the real you. James smiled and it transformed his entire face. Thank you for coming. For trusting me enough to be here. An unexpected spark as Rachel stood to leave. James walked her to the elevator. They stood in the foyer, and the air between them felt charged with something neither of them had expected. Rachel, James said quietly, I need to tell you something else. Over the past few months, I have found myself looking forward to Monday mornings because it meant I would see you. I have been staying late at the office on nights when I knew you would be working. I have been finding excuses to stop by your desk. Rachel's heart began to race. James, what are you saying? I am saying that somewhere along the way, my feelings became more than professional. And I know that is complicated. I know I am your boss and you just got out of a relationship and this is terrible timing. He ran a hand through his hair, looking nervous for the first time since she had arrived. But after tonight, after finally being honest about everything else, I could not let you leave without being honest about this too. Rachel stood frozen, processing his words. 6 hours ago, she had been crying alone in her apartment. Now she was standing in her boss's penthouse while he confessed feelings for her. It was surreal and overwhelming and terrifying. But it was also the first thing that had felt right in months. The morning. After Rachel did not go home after leaving James's penthouse. Instead, she walked through the snowy Boston streets as the city slowly woke up on Christmas morning. Her mind spun with everything that had happened. James Whitmore, her reserved and professional boss, had feelings for her. He had orchestrated her staying in Boston because he did not want to be alone. He had shared his deepest pain and vulnerability with her. And somehow, despite the impossibility of it all, she realized she had feelings for him too. She had always found James attractive in an abstract way. The same way anyone might notice that their boss was handsome. But she had never allowed herself to think of him as anything other than her employer. Now, after seeing him without his armor, after hearing his story and sharing her own, something had changed. The connection between them felt real and deep and completely terrifying. By the time she returned to her apartment, she had made a decision. She needed to talk to someone who would tell her the truth. Even if she did not want to hear it, seeking advice, Rachel called her older sister Hannah in Portland, despite the early hour. Hannah was the practical one in the family, a family law attorney who approached everything with logic and caution. Rachel, it is 6 in the morning on Christmas. Are you okay? Hannah's voice was thick with sleep but immediately alert. Rachel told her everything. The breakup with Tyler, the accidental message, the invitation to James's penthouse, the long night of conversation, and James's confession. She left nothing out, needing Hannah's objective perspective. There was a long silence when Rachel finished. Okay, Hannah finally said. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. Your billionaire boss, who you have worked for 2 years, manipulated a work situation to keep you in Boston over Christmas because he has feelings for you and did not want to be alone. Rachel winced at the way Hannah phrased it. When you say it like that, It sounds bad, Hannah sighed. Rachel, I am going to ask you some questions, and I need you to be completely honest with yourself. Do you have feelings for him, or are you just vulnerable right now because of Tyler? Examining her feelings, Achel sat on her couch and thought carefully. I think I have had feelings for James for a while, but never let myself acknowledge them. He is my boss. It was inappropriate. But now that he has been honest with me, I cannot stop thinking about him. Hannah was quiet for a moment. Has he ever done anything inappropriate before this? Made you uncomfortable? Used his position to pressure you? Rachel shook her head, then realized her sister could not see her. No, never. He has always been completely professional. That is why this is so surprising. Okay, Hannah said slowly. Here's my concern. You are in a vulnerable place right now. You just ended a 3-year relationship. You are lonely and sad. James is in a position of power over you, and even if he does not mean to, that creates pressure. If you pursue something with him and it goes badly, you could lose your job, your career trajectory, everything. Rachel knew her sister was right. But what if it goes well? What if this is real? Hannah sighed again. Then you need to do this the right way. You cannot date your boss, period. It is unethical and puts you in an impossible position. If James really cares about you, he will understand that. Making a decision, Achel spent the rest of Christmas Day alone, thinking about everything Hannah had said. She knew her sister was right about the power dynamic. Even if James never intentionally used his position to pressure her, the imbalance would always be there. She could never be sure if opportunities came because she earned them or because of their relationship. She could never advocate for herself without wondering if it would damage their personal connection. But she also could not stop thinking about the man she had spent the night talking to. The vulnerable, grieving, honest James who had let down all his walls. She wanted to know that person better. She wanted to explore what could develop between them. The day after Christmas, Rachel asked James to meet her at a coffee shop near the office. Neutral territory. He arrived looking nervous, his usual composure noticeably absent. Thank you for meeting me, Rachel said once they both had coffee. I needed some time to think about everything. James nodded. I understand. And if you want to pretend Christmas Eve never happened, if you want to go back to how things were, I will respect that completely. Proposing a solution, Rachel took a deep breath. I do not want to pretend it never happened, but I also cannot date my boss. The power dynamic is too unbalanced. It would not be fair to either of us. She saw disappointment flash across James's face, but he nodded. You are absolutely right. I should not have put you in this position. Rachel reached across the table and touched his hand. Let me finish. I cannot date my boss. But what if you were not my boss? James frowned. I do not understand. Are you quitting? Rachel shook her head. I have been thinking about what I really want to do with my career. You know, I studied marketing because it was practical, but what I actually love is brand strategy and creative development. I want to build things from the ground up, not just execute other people's visions. James was listening intently now. Go on. A new opportunity. What if you helped me find a position at another agency? Or better yet, what if you introduced me to some contacts who might be interested in hiring a brand strategist? I could leave Whitmore Digital, start fresh somewhere else. Then we would not have a professional conflict. Rachel watched James process this. You would leave the company to explore a relationship with me? Rachel, that is a huge risk. What if things do not work out between us? You would have given up a good job for nothing, Rachel smiled. First, I would be leaving to pursue a career I actually want, not just for you. That is important. Second, yes, there is risk. But Hannah, my sister, told me something this morning. She said if James really cares about you, he will want what is best for your career, even if it complicates things personally. So I am asking you, do you care enough about me to help me find something better, even if it means I am not working for you anymore? James's response, James was quiet for a long moment, his blue eyes searching her face. Then he pulled out his phone and started typing. What are you doing? Rachel asked. Making calls. I have a friend who runs a boutique creative agency in Cambridge. They specialize in brand development for startups. It is exactly the kind of work you would excel at." He looked up at her. "But I need you to understand something. I will make the introduction. I will give you the best recommendation I can, but you have to earn the position. I will not use my influence to get you hired somewhere you do not belong." Rachel felt warmth spreading through her chest. "I would not want you to. I want to know I got the job because I am good at what I do." James smiled. "You are good at what you do. You are exceptional. Any agency would be lucky to have you." He reached across the table and took her hand. "But I need to know you are sure about this, about taking a risk on your career and on us." Rachel squeezed his hand. "I am sure. For the first time in years, I am choosing what I actually want instead of what feels safe. That is worth the risk." New year, new start. 2 weeks later, Rachel accepted a position as brand strategist at Lighthouse Creative Agency in Cambridge. The job was challenging, the team was brilliant, and the work was exactly what she had always dreamed of doing. Last day at Whitmore Digital was bittersweet, but James made sure to keep things professional, shaking her hand formally in front of the rest of the staff and wishing her well. It was only when she was packing up her desk that he slipped her a note. "Dinner tomorrow night? It's 2 people with no professional connection, just exploring what this could be." New Year's Eve found them at a small Italian restaurant in the North End, talking and laughing like they had known each other for years instead of weeks. When midnight approached, they walked along the waterfront, watching fireworks explode over Boston Harbor. "Thank you," James said softly, pulling her close as the crowd around them counted down, "for taking a risk. For seeing past the walls I had built. For reminding me that life is still worth living." 3 months later, leaned back in her chair and smiled at the brand concept spread across her desk. In 3 months at Lighthouse, she had already led to major campaigns and earned the respect of her colleagues. Her work was creative, bold, and successful. She had made the right choice for her career. Personally, things with James were developing slowly but beautifully. They had agreed to take things at a measured pace, building a real foundation instead of rushing into something. They had dinner twice a week, went to museums and concerts, took long walks through different Boston neighborhoods. James was different outside the office, more relaxed and open. He laughed more easily, talked about Catherine without looking, haunted, and seemed genuinely interested in building a future instead of just surviving. Her phone buzzed with a text from him. "Dinner at my place tonight. I am cooking. Fair warning, I am terrible at cooking." Rachel laughed and typed back, "Your place sounds perfect. I will bring wine and low expectations for the food."
As she
gathered her things to leave work, Rachel caught her reflection in the window. She looked different than she had 3 months ago. Happier, more confident, more alive. The girl who had spent Christmas Eve crying alone in her apartment felt like a different person, full circled that evening. Rachel arrived at James's penthouse to find it transformed. There were plants on the shelves, colorful throw pillows on the couch, and photographs on the walls. In the kitchen, James was attempting to make pasta, flour somehow dusted across his sweater. "This is harder than it looks," he said, laughing as he tried to roll out dough. Catherine always made it look easy. But he said her name without pain now, with fondness and love but not crushing grief. They ate slightly lumpy but surprisingly tasty pasta on the couch, talking about their days like any normal couple. As Rachel looked around the apartment, she realized it finally looked like a home. "You have been making changes," she observed. James followed her gaze. "Catherine would not have wanted me to turn our home into a shrine. She would have wanted me to live, to fill it with new memories, to be happy." He took Rachel's hand. "You helped me see that. You helped me remember that moving forward does not mean forgetting, looking forward later." Standing on the balcony, looking out at the Boston skyline, James wrapped his arms around Rachel from behind. "I never thought I would feel this way again," he admitted. "After Catherine died, I assumed that was it for me. One great love, and then just work until I died." Rachel leaned back against him. "And now?" James kissed the top of her head. "Now I am learning that the heart has more capacity than I thought. I will always love Catherine. She will always be part of my story. But that does not mean my story has to end with her." Rachel turned in his arms to face him. I am glad I sent that wrong message on Christmas Eve. I am glad you asked me to come here. I am glad we took the risk." James smiled. "Me too. Even though it started with you crying into your phone and me being a manipulative boss," Rachel laughed.
We should probably leave that part out when people ask how we met.
James kissed her softly. "Agreed. We will just say we connected over the holidays and leave out the messy details." The future as spring turned to summer, Rachel and James continued building their relationship on solid ground. There were challenges, of course. James still had moments when grief would hit him unexpectedly. Rachel still had insecurities from her relationship with Tyler. But they faced these challenges together, with honesty and patience and growing trust. One evening in early June, as they walked through the public garden watching ducks glide across the pond, James stopped suddenly. "What is wrong?" Rachel asked. James took both her hands. "Nothing is wrong. Everything is actually incredibly right." "Rachel, 6 months ago, I was just going through the motions of life. You changed that, you reminded me what it feels like to actually live, to look forward to things, to be excited about the future." Rachel felt her heart racing. "James, what are you saying?" He smiled. "I am saying that I love you. I am saying that I want to keep building this life we are creating together. I am saying that sending that wrong message on Christmas Eve was the best accident that ever happened to both of us." Rachel threw her arms around him, laughing and crying at the same time. "I love you too. And yes, it was the best accident ever." As they stood there in the fading sunlight, surrounded by families and couples and the bustle of the city, Rachel realized that sometimes the wrong turn leads you exactly where you need to be. Sometimes loneliness connects you to the person who understands it best. Sometimes the most unexpected relationships turn out to be the ones worth taking the biggest risks for.